Hey guys, so recently I've been getting an absurd amount of comments on my videos just about how I get so much FPS. So believe it or not, I don't have an insanely expensive setup like some of your comments probably think I do. Not saying my setup is cheap or bad, but it's nothing compared to a professional player setup or Tifu's $20,000 setup. I'm a college student who used my summer money to buy my PC, and I'll get into the exact specs a little later in the video when I talk about hardware for Fortnite. But obviously, the point of this video will be to show how I get such good FPS. Right now, I cap my FPS at 240, even though I'm on 144 Hz, so I probably should cap it at 144 FPS or even 160. But I can get the consistent extra FPS, so why not make my game a little smoother? I get around 200 FPS in a normal game and around 150 and higher in denser areas like Tilted or around huge build fights. Creative and Playground I usually get over 300. Compared to a majority of people and a lot of people that comment on my video, this is a pretty insane amount and 2 to 3 times what they get. So let's dive in. The first way to improve your FPS is your Fortnite settings. So I guess I'll start at the top. Make sure your game is in full screen. I actually saw a clip of OP when he first came back and started streaming, and he was playing in windowed full screen. And if you guys didn't know, there's input delay if you do. So if you use a custom crosshair that forces you to play windowed full screen, I'd suggest not using it just because full screen is way better, and windowed full screen not only gives you input lag but will decrease your FPS overall. Display resolution is likely default on 16:9 and 1920x1080. So what you can do if you want better graphics but you don't really like the look of stretch resolution is you can lower this to 1600x900 or 1200x720. So this is the same 16:9 aspect ratio but just less pixels, so your GPU will process less and you'll get more FPS in game. And the best part is because you didn't change your aspect ratio, it's still the same FOV and everything will look the same as if you were playing on native, just a little bit uglier. Going down to 1280x720 probably isn't necessary if you have a desktop, but would be pretty good if you're playing on a laptop. I personally use 1600x1080, which is a stretch resolution. You can check my other video out on how to change your resolution, or my full video on what stretch resolution is and its benefits if you don't know already. But basically, stretched affords me more FPS because less pixels will show up on the screen, and it also gives me a greater FOV or field of view. Many people think that these two things offset each other, but while you do see more and thus your GPU will have to process more, the lower resolution overall will overweight it and you will without a doubt get more FPS. Now the res I use is pretty close to native, and you can go much further down to get more FPS in resolutions like 1440x1080, 1350x1080, 1154, and 1080x1080, which is really sweaty. Next is the actual Fortnite settings. So starting with view distance, I have this on epic. View distance is just the distance a player can see other players and objects like buildings and builds. So this doesn't have to be epic, but I keep it that way for the small advantage that it gives me. If you want to increase your FPS though, you should probably play on near or medium, as this will give you an extra 5 to 10 FPS minimum. The rest of the settings I always have on low, as I don't think any of them are beneficial to keep on anything higher than low or off. The only thing that I could think of would be to just put effects and textures on medium, but other than that, the rest should pretty much stay on low, and that can give you a solid 50 to 60 FPS minimum if you had them all on high or epic. So now VSync. VSync is just an option for your graphics card that locks your frame rate at your monitor's refresh rate. So it will lock your computer with a 144 Hz monitor at 144 FPS. So some people use this to smooth their game and prevent screen tearing, but a large majority of people, including me, have it off as it can cause input delay, and it will also decrease your FPS. This is completely different than G-Sync or FreeSync, which are better versions of VSync because they're built into the monitor and they don't cause any input delay. Next, motion blur should always be off as it just looks ugly and will probably give you a headache as well as lower your FPS. And then lastly, we'll keep FPS on just because we want to see what kind of frames that we're getting. So now we'll head over to the Windows settings on your computer and we'll see what we can do there. First thing we want to do, which I actually hadn't done until a few weeks ago, is go over to Game Bar and Game DVR and then Game Settings and turn them both off. I had Game Bar on for a while until someone watching one of my videos told me to take it off, and what that basically does is it records your background gameplay even if you have NVIDIA on, and it takes up CPU power, so turning it off will give you some solid frames back. After that, stay within your settings and go to the privacy and then down to background apps and click the options off so no apps will run in the background. Then go to your power settings and click on additional power settings. By default it should be on balanced, but you'll want to use the high performance option. you can't find it, it's probably under the hide additional plan, so just click there and there should be a little drop down and you'll probably see it. Next, go to your NVIDIA control panel, which is just right clicking on your home screen, and then make the 3D settings emphasize performance over quality. So mine was emphasizing quality before, and then I changed it to performance, and you can instantly get some FPS and it feels way better. After that, go to your control panel, system and advanced settings, and change that to adjust for best performance. So if you couldn't tell, pretty much all those were just changing your computer settings from quality to performance, which is what we want because we want to get FPS and we want our game to feel better. So those are the basic things you can do, and now I'll show you guys one you probably didn't know of or haven't heard of before. So you're going to want to go to Task Manager, which is just you press Control Alt Delete on your keyboard, and then down to Task Manager. Make sure you have Fortnite booted up, and you should see it at the top of your CPU usage. If you have any other programs taking up a lot of CPU usage, like more than 40 to 50% other than Fortnite, something like Spotify could do this even if it's running in background, you should right click on it and end the task. You can have a few things open that take up a majority of your CPU, but if your game feels pretty bad and your game's running slow, then definitely start ending a lot of those tasks. Now the trick is, if you go to Fortnite and click go to details and then hover over the process that says Fortnite client dash shipping underscore BE, and you right click on it and go down to set priority, you can then set that priority to high, and this will definitely improve your FPS and you should feel it immediately. Basically what it does is it basically just set the priority of that process to high over every other single process that you have going on in your CPU. So for some of you, you probably just got an error that says access denied. So what I'll do is I'll leave a link for that fix in the description of this video, so just make sure you go over to watch that if you get that error. It's not a long fix, but the video I linked covers it really well, so there's really no point in making the same video. And now lastly, we could talk about computer hardware. So for any game, if you guys didn't know already, there's pretty much just two most important components for running your game and determining your FPS. So those are your GPU, which is your graphics card, and your CPU. For graphics and visuals in Fortnite, which is basically just looking around and seeing the map and textures and all that, that's when your GPU will be used. But in combat and a majority of the gameplay, that'll be dealt with the CPU. So for GPUs, if you want a solid 60 FPS at 1080p, which is just high def, you'll want at least a 1050 Ti. I have a GTX 1070 Ti, which is kind of overkill for Fortnite, as I don't stream on it yet, but something like a 1060 will do you just a fine job, and you can probably get a solid 150 FPS on that. For CPU, you'll need at least an i4 or an i5 if you expect to get 60 FPS consistently. Good CPUs would be anything like an i7. I specifically use an i7 8700K, so paired with my GPU, my computer is really powerful, but you can get solid frames with not as expensive parts. Luckily, the CPU helps me render my videos, and I do a lot of other stuff on my computer that doesn't include gaming, so it's not a bad reason to have a pretty powerful system like I do. And I just want to make this clear that I'm really not an expert on hardware, so if you have any hardware related questions, I suggest going over to Reddit and to r/buildapc or any of the PC Reddits, because asking questions there will probably be more helpful than leaving one in the comments, as I'll try to get back to you guys if you have any questions, but obviously I'm not a complete expert on it. So overall, this should help you guys gain a lot of FPS if you don't have PC computers, and should even help people with nice rigs and scrims and crowded points of interest, as that's when I used to drop down to like 40-50 FPS, because scrims get so hectic, there's so many builds, there's so much crap going on. So for today's shout out, I just want to shout out DarksFN, who used my code Jerian Grant in the item shop. If you want to be shouted out in the next video, just send me a picture of you buying something in the item shop using my code, and I'll be sure to put you guys in. Also, if you guys enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We just went from 3K to 4K subscribers literally in like 2 or 3 days, and I just want to say thank you guys so much for that. So that's it for me, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.
Everybody's paying attention.